Hey guys, so I figured I'd do another video here for us. Today we're gonna do a little gem point. I've got a piece of Snake River agate here, cooked flake from my buddy Danny Sportiello, and I think I'm gonna try and get a Vendetta point out of this. We've got just a little bit of a concave face there that we're gonna have to work out, and then we actually have a hole that goes clean through the tip here. Probably can't see the light good enough through it, but you'll have to trust me. So we're gonna try and get this worked down into a nice little preform and then notched into a Vendetta point. I've been working on a case of Willamette Valley and just generally Western Oregon points, and so this will fit right into that. These Vendetta points were made up on the Columbia River Plateau area. They were found kind of isolated together from what I understand. So the first thing we need to do is take care of our edges here. So our edges are all too thin, too sharp to flake properly from. So we're just gonna clean those edges up real quick. I think one of the easier ways to do that is just with your bopper. I know this hole in the tip is not going to be in my finished piece, so we're just gonna chip that away. If you guys are struggling to see this at all, if you are on a phone or any kind of tablet, touchscreen, anything like that, you can zoom in on the video. I tend to do that a lot when I'm watching other people's napping videos, mainly because I want to see what they're doing. So I was watching my first video series last night and I was re-watching my notching, and so I went in and I zoomed in on it and I could see it pretty well what I was doing. So just a little tip for you guys if you're having a hard time seeing. It's really hard to film this properly because it happens in your lap, of course. I could do a POV, but I don't really have a good way to hold the camera from my perspective and still make a decent point. So for now, this is what I'm working with, and hopefully you guys can figure the zooming out, and that might help. So I've just taken down the edges on this piece. Really nothing fancy at all. Just trying to get them stiff and to a thick enough point where I can run some flakes off of them. So then I'm gonna abrade it. And this abrasion helps to do the same thing. It thickens the edge to where you can flake from it. Yeah, we might actually do this one with a horseshoe nail. Agate tends to work well with that technique, and I could really use the smaller contact surface on something so thin. I think a lot of our Western Oregon points were made this way. There's not a ton of large host material. The Snake River agate comes from kind of northern Idaho area, if I remember correctly, maybe kind of central, but they had some better agate sources. All of the agate here in the valley that would be accurate for this type, and even up north, it's usually a much smaller seam of the agate from what I understand. So a lot of flakes would have been used to make your points. So I'm just running flakes into that concavity that I have. I've got to get rid of that first, especially on something so thin. Otherwise I'm gonna have a point that looks like it's curved because it'll have a concave midsection. removing those deltas from the first flake series that I just ran. Now I'll go in and I'll continue to do the same thing, same side. This would really kind of be like a reverse bevel platform, but it adds convexity to your piece if you flake from higher on an edge like this, and if you turn the edge and then flake that opposite way. So that's what I'm doing. And I already know that I'm going to lose quite a bit of my width and possibly even a little length during this process, because I have to run these flakes over and over into this inconsistent area, or not inconsistent, but just, you know, concave, not what we're going for. So I'm not really being super picky with my flakes. I'm just trying to get things rounded out. I should probably be doing this over a harder pad. When your flake is so curved like this, you have a really high possibility of bridging your flake, because you'll press down in the middle and only the ends make contact, and that will snap it. So it's important I get that curve out quickly too, because I don't want my piece to snap from being so wickedly curved like this. So I'm going to layer up another pad, and let's see, I might even have another, yeah, this will do. So I'm just going to give it some more support here, hopefully. Yeah, this pad's kind of not shaped ideal for this. Let's see if I can fix that problem efficiently. In case anybody needed a reminder on how sharp obsidian can be, that's not thin leather. This stuff is ridiculously tough. I can't even remember where I got it, but that'll cut real good. Yeah, it's still a really wide pad for my hand. I'm just gonna kind of scoot it back from my wrist, but then it gets in the way a little bit. We're gonna do our best. I'm gonna switch up to a slightly larger flaker. This will help run more mass. I just want to get this beveled and curved face kind of straightened out quickly here in an efficient manner. I'm liking the extra support this stacked up pad is allowing me. That's a good thing. So I'm just taking pass after pass of flakes here, trying to get them to round up and into my concavity on this back face. This isn't really an easy reduction here, as simple as this may look. I'm really having to focus on my support and then trying my best to get this back face cleanly flaked. I have to use my leg pressure here. This initial bulb of percussion area has a slightly denser bit of agate in it, and it's requiring a little more strength to flake. We're starting to get there. It's a slow process, especially when you have such a wild curve to your starting piece, but it's getting there. Yeah, this darker agate is significantly tougher, it seems. Ooh. That one poked me pretty good. Just a quick and gentle reminder for all of you out there watching that don't already know, wear your PPE, all your protective personal equipment. You really don't want to lose too much blood doing this, especially when you're working with something really sharp like agate. It'll get you. I'm starting to get a convexity to where I can push a little bit harder, trying to run my flakes up into this concavity. We're almost flat on that face now. Got a little bit of a bad spot there. And then we have all of this here that's concave still that we got to remove. I think it's going to be easiest to flip this and take off some mass from our back face now, and then start running some thinning flakes into the other face. So I think that's what we'll do. Run a series of flakes and then turn the edge back over again. So it's really just so that I can make the platform shape that I anticipate will do best to get rid of my concavities. This piece kind of reminds me a bit of when I used to work bottle bottoms, because you have that big dome on the one face and then the big dish on the other. It's a lot like that. I think we're to the point where we can size down in pads. Just got rid of one of mine there. The tool started to get a little bit of a burr on the tip of it, so I'm just gonna dress that back here so that we can keep going. I'm leaking, can you see it? My little flake got me. So just keep an eye on that. That's really not too bad. They just have a tendency to poke you a little. Alright, I think this flaker's a little too dull. I think this might do well now. By the shape of the flakes coming off right now, I think they're starting to straighten out and clean up this back face. That's the hope. Yep, they're starting to round up in. We're building the convexity that we need to be able to remove this large concavity. And that's what we're going for. There's a bit of a bad spot on the side I've been complaining about. I was just trying to flake the actual hinge itself. Sometimes you'll get them to go. This should clean it up though. Yeah, that got the majority of it. Alright, we're working on it. This concave face is slightly less concave. We're starting to get down into an arrowhead shape. But as you can see, it's still not straight. Still some cleanup needed here. I think it's time for this tool to get a little cleanup. It's, the end has dulled. bit particular about how I like my tools to look and how they feel, so I try really hard to keep up on that. We're starting to get there. It might thin out to where it doesn't want to give up all of that concave face. We're gonna have to see. Sometimes there's just not enough rock to get the point you want and get both faces cleaned off as best as you like. So it's starting to, we're starting to get a point out of this. See the flakes going on. That's the domed face. The concave face still has that island in the middle there. See where all the flakes ran up to it. So we're trying to get that cleaned up. We still have plenty of rock for the point that we're looking to make. So we'll just keep cleaning this up. I think we're going to introduce this tool here. It's a copper pipe that I've flattened the end of. And it's rolled across the edge here to shear my inconsistencies where I've flaked. And I will occasionally use it like this as a pressure flaker. I just press the corner of it down into my piece. do a little bit of a reverse bevel. Set my platform up slightly above the thinning line. So I'm not really trying to thin this face. I just need my flakes to run up into the center there. My other face has the mass that needs to go away. This face just has a big divot that I think is ugly. Alright, so we're about 28 minutes in. We're starting to get this face cleaned up. It's starting to straighten out. It's still thick. We've been flaking with our horseshoe nail flaker. We're just trying to get rid of that big indentation. It's really trying its best to hang around. It's almost flat. I'd really love to see it go away, but this point's almost out of material for me to make that happen. So I don't know if I maybe wasn't aggressive enough, or I don't know if anybody else could have gotten that out of there either. But I'm going to switch to this back side, take a row of flakes through my big inconsistent hingy dome. Is now my concave face is actually kind of my clean face. So we're just gonna come in and thin this face down. Let's see, I don't know if that's the side I want to start from. I think I want to start from this other side. I don't have a good way to explain that decision to you guys, but essentially I had the contour to run the flakes further from this face, which is going to let me come in and meet them better when I come in from the other side. This back face didn't flatten quite how I had initially intended. I mean, the point's thin now, which is great, but I'm picky, and it doesn't have the uniform profile that I like to have on a piece. So does that mean you just chuck it? Do you keep working it? Do you just work it down into nothingness? I don't really know. We're kind of about at the size where I was gonna make the point that I was gonna make out of it. We're thin, but you can still see that hump there on this side. It's not really what I was after. The flake should have ran into it a little better. So that's that. I really don't have a great spot to thin it extra from either. Those passes just kind of did what they did. Contemplating, you guys, I'm contemplating. I don't want to make a thick point. You know that. I could do a Columbia Plateau from it, and that would kind of fit into my Willamette Valley case. You know, this isn't Willamette Valley rock. I'm not necessarily being picky like that. Or I could go through with making a Vendetta, and I might be able to send some flakes in here just because I'm going to notch the sides out. Decisions. I think what I'm going to do is make a clean symmetrical preform here, figure out what I like about it, if it needs anything adjusted, and then I'll decide what I want to make. "36 minutes. These little points, I know they're small, so they seem like they'd be easy, but I put a lot of effort into trying to make my gem points and arrow points, or whatever you want to call them, nice. I really try and make them uniform and sharp and delicate, and that takes time. And especially working something so small, you really have to be careful to support it well, keep your flaker sharp, and be conscious of the lack of extra material and room for error on something like this. So we're just taking our edges in. I'm picking away any little deltas that would be in the edge, because if I do decide to do a Vendetta out of this piece of rock, I'm going to have shoulders, and those shoulders get really wonky if your initial edge you start with isn't straight, it'll make the whole point look weird, even if your notching's all straight and even. If you have one shoulder that's winging up towards you, it'll stand out. There's some kind of little bit of mineral inclusion in the tip here. Makes it slightly crumbly. Okay, we pretty much have a preform. So now our options to get rid of this big ugly hump. We either taper this all in and make a big flared base, wide barbed point, or we take the edges in and run flakes across. Really, I'm kind of stumped, but let's see, is that off like it looks? Yeah. Alright, that's a little better. I think we're going to do Vendetta. I wanted to do one, so that's what I'm going to do. It is finally starting to feel like spring here in Oregon, Western Oregon. And so my little metal shed is starting to feel warm again, which is wonderful. I've had a couple cold mornings out here. Okay, let's get everything together. So we're gonna start with our base. I like to, for my Vendetta points. I like to figure out where my middle is gonna be on that point. And I actually have a neat little tool that'll help me do that. Kind of simulates the end of an arrow. And I'll put my point down into it, and I'll just get it lined up in the middle. And that'll kind of help me figure out what my stem is going to look like at this point. This tip needs moved over just ever so slightly. Having a good preform before you start doing a bunch of edge shaping, like a Vendetta, Stockton, whatever, hook 'em, any of those. It's so vital. So make sure that your edges are clean, your tips symmetrical, all that before you get started. Okay, so I've got a pretty good idea of what I want my stem to be. So I'm just going to start notching. I'm going to come in from the corners on this one. And I'm just going to, let's see, can you see it all? I want you to be able to see a little bit. I'm just going to walk a row of flakes in from the corner and start isolating a stem. And I can work this in as I go. One thing I found, even if your stem looks centered on one face, which it doesn't really in the camera, but the other face, it can look way off. So I like to kind of work it back and forth. It helps me to get an idea of just where it needs to be set. That way I can do my best to guarantee I'm going to have a uniform base. I like a nice symmetrical base, symmetrical notches or stems, whatever you're making. I think that makes for the best point. So it's actually going to kind of look like a little miniature Hillsborough point for just a couple minutes here. Especially with this clear agate, which kind of reminds me of coral. So now that my stem is designated, I come in and drive big, almost fluting flakes next to my stem. And the reason I do that is because I want the bottom corners of these ears, or the notch, the stem, where they join, I want them to be extremely sharp when this is done. I think that makes for a really clean looking point when your inside of your wings is nice and sharp, nice and uniform. When they get really rounded out, wide, kind of U-shaped, to me, that just looks like the notch stalled, which is really easy to do on this kind of point, but I really like to make it as clean as I can, and I think that goes into it. It all goes into it, right? Try and make as symmetrical of a freeform as I can. Try and get the tip as needle sharp as I can. Make my stem as centered as possible. Make the junction between my stem and the wings as sharp as I can. I think all that helps. I think you can improve your own napping by focusing on things like that. Try and focus on my flake pattern. I try and focus on not letting barbs snap off. It all comes together in your finished piece. We all know that. Any of us that have been napping, we all do our best to do this. So I'm notching with a piece of welding rod set into a plastic Delrin handle with set screws on a wooden pad with a piece of leather glued to the top. And I'm just walking those ears in until I get to a point where I like them. I usually like a little bit of a longer stem on these guys. It just makes for a neat looking point. And that's also going to give me a chance to kind of clean up some of that initial island that we got from having a concave face that we tried to work out. This stuff really likes to keep these little fingernail flakes. It'll run in and then it'll stop. Like I was mentioning, this stuff has a really bad tendency to pick up these little fingernail flakes, and I'm going to do my best to manage those as it goes here. And all while trying not to stab my thumb. This particular one is, oh, it was pretty set on trying to be part of my point, but I wasn't really interested. The reason I'm doing this mid-notching is because these little flakes will stop your notching flakes from rounding out nicely. Alright, well, I got as much of it as I could. So I'm a little uneven with my stem here. I'm just going to true that up just a hair. And at this point, this looks like a Columbia Plateau point. Can be done with that by now, but we're gonna try to do our edge work here and clean up the edges and start notching those out, which will be fun. So I'm taking my final notching flakes here. Unfortunately, one side did it wonderful. The other side really fought me. I like these final flakes to just be a single flake. Scrunch that in place, and that makes the back of your notch look nice and sharp. So I brought the stem up a little higher just to get both sides to do what I was asking there. That looks pretty okay. You can see how it comes to a sharp point down on the bottom of those notches. Contrast nice against my shirt there, so you can see. Now we're going to do our edges. We're going to do a 3-tiered Vendetta. I usually like to draw my tiers out so that I can keep track. I'm sure there's some kind of golden ratio that makes these look good or bad. I think I just end up doing something similar just from looking at them and eyeballing the ratios myself. They're probably kind of close because there seems to be some kind of relation between getting them all lined up nice and there being kind of a neat size ratio together. Alright, so this side, now that I'm inspecting it better, has quite a bit of initial delta flake spots that needed cleaned up real quick. Okay, so start here. To do a Vendetta point, you start by making a notch, and you'll work it back into the wing. You want those wings to come in towards the center of your point. So you're just going to work that top corner back to the middle of your point. Okay, I'm coming up on an opportunity here to remove some of that mass I had initially wanted to target by making this point style, deciding on this style. So I'm just going to braid that edge. I'm going to push my flakes up into it. Try to. There's a little bit of a hinge there. So an important point to note when you're doing a style like this, you really want to set up some platforms as you're notching and thin the body of your point from your edges, okay? Because ultimately what will happen if you don't and you just kind of run notching flakes, they'll bevel, and this notch will stall because it just gets thicker and thicker as you get towards the middle of the point. So you really want to run your flakes in across the piece. And that's actually thinning out that thicker midsection that I had. Just doing a little inspection there, making sure I still like everything. For the most part, I am going for a straight line from the bottom of whatever my notch becomes to the back point. When you make a Vendetta and it has kind of curved ears back, it just doesn't look as aggressive. And I think these were really an aggressive point, so I like to style them like it. A little bit of backstory on this point that I'm crafting here. So once again, these were made around the Columbia Gorge, the Oregon, Washington area, but I believe they were found in Oregon. And it was documented, I believe, by the Columbus explorers that these points were war point. They were being dipped into any kind of poison that the first people could get their hands on. And the reason that they had these strange breaks in them, you guys will see here, it's gonna come in together, it'll look like a harpoon almost, is they would dip the tips of these into whatever poison it was and shoot them at someone they really didn't like, slave raiders, whatever other kind of no good folk, and it would break off into their body, and it would actually poison them. And so this was, you know, early biological weapon engineering when you really think about it. So this was an intentional point. There's no doubt that they were intentionally trying to damage whatever this was being shot at. So I just found that really fascinating when I was learning about these points, and I, you know, just thought how interesting it was that, you know, even when these people were essentially surviving, they were still coming up with ways to best their enemies, if you will. So it's just fascinating. So that side's looking pretty good. I'm going to come in and try and match it from the other side here. Sorry, I don't know where I'm at on the camera here. You guys are just going to have to do a lot of zooming, I guess. I'm sorry. But we're getting there. This point's cleaning up. So whenever I'm making a sharp shoulder, like I am here, I'm going to start my next row of flakes up at that shoulder. I'm going to push in and really try and thin out that area. And I may even actually flake up towards the shoulder at some point. You really want to make sure that you're not creating a thick area at the junction here. I like to get my thinning flakes done early when I'm doing these too. You really don't want to start tapering in the the neck on one of these points and then overshoot a flake. It's always a terrible bummer when that happens. So to avoid that, you do it while it's still got some width. That really helps. I have what looks like a small crack in the tip of this point on this side. So I'm just going to very carefully work up to and around it without upsetting it too awful much. Looks like I started this side just a little bit high, which really won't be a big deal. I'll just match it with the other side here in a moment. It's actually not too bad. I might not need to match anything. It's hard to decide before it's all finished. Sometimes it'll look off and it's not. Alright, I'll come match it on this side now. Just a little bit higher than the side I just did.
I guess lower. It needs to be a little bit higher to match the side I just did. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, that looks pretty clean. Clean up the side to match that straight again.
Okay guys, almost 10 minutes over an hour here. We've got our first tier done. Start our second here, and then this plane will be finished. I'm actually going to disregard my initial line here in favor of a slightly lower shoulder. Which will allow this to have a slightly wider neck at this, I guess, distal junction. We'll get real sciencey. So this would be your proximal junction, right? And this would be your distal junction. There's going to be two joints. So the distal joint is what we're creating right now. And if you put that distal joint too high up on your point, you get into too narrow of a spot, and then to make your shoulder look good, you either have to take your point in to where the neck looks wrong, it's too skinny, or you have a really shallow second joint and it doesn't look as good. So you move down just slightly into where the point's a little thicker, and that allows the proper neck width. I apologize, I recognize that I pause as I'm speaking here, but I'm kind of holding my breath as I take some of these flakes. You really get to the point where you realize it's got to be right or it's not going to work. So I'm trying to use my brain power to make a point, and I'm also trying to share it to make YouTube at the same time. So this would be one of those points that if you're not familiar with making them, you might really appreciate using an optivisor. Just being able to see up close would be extremely beneficial for anybody that's trying to duplicate this kind of point style. You're up here working on the tip of one of these points. You really want your
notcher or pressure flaker, whatever you're gonna end up using, to be super duper sharp. You don't want to have to press too hard to take too big of a flake and ultimately press the tip of your piece off. Like, even still, that's not quite as sharp as I wanted it, so I'm going to come back in and fine tune it, because it really is that important to keep the tip of this sharp. So we're going to come in and we're going to match this notch here as best we can. Okay. Wipe my old pencil mark off. It's going to help me visualize. And I might actually even pencil in a new line. Okay, this one's kind of for all the money right here. So if you blow this one, moving up your tip's going to change your symmetry. Or not your symmetry necessarily, but that ratio that we were talking about earlier. How you're deciding how much base and how much of a middle tier and how much of a top tier you need. I think we're there. I think we found the spot we need. If you're off a 1/16 of an inch on a point this small, you're off. So you really want to try to get everything matching for the sake of symmetry. If you care about symmetry, that is. If you don't, and you're not burdened by the strive for perfection, then get it close. It'll still work like an arrowhead. I think a lot of times we emphasize making these really fine points. And in reality, they were a disposable piece of rock that was intended to gather food with. It wasn't always such a big deal to make it as perfectly symmetrical. And I think they probably tried to honor the spirit of their harvest and things like that by not making terrible gear, terrible points always, right? But I think a lot of times we emphasize symmetry, you know, and I don't think that's always needed. But when I'm gonna do a video, I like to make a symmetrical point for people. So that's what they like to see usually. Alright, this last flake's really important. So I'm gonna once again sharpen the tip of my flaker. So now I'm just coming in and doing some dress-up flakes. Just making a pretty point. Everybody likes a tidy arrowhead, so just tidying it up.
Oh, goodness.
Been bending my elbow for a while there, I can tell.
Alright, you guys.
Hour and 20 minutes from start to finish. Well, give me just a sec. We'll see if this breaks it or not. Alright, got lucky.
So, there is the finished Vendetta point, Columbia River Vendetta. So the tip of this, up by my index finger there, would be dipped into a poison and shot at the enemy. A lot of these were what I would call two-tiered, so they would be like that with a point at the end of them, right? Not like so. But there is an example of one that was not as detailed as this, but it was three-tiered. This one's a pretty translucent agate. It's nice and thin. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching the video and for your guys' support. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Let me know what you want to see me make. So thank you.